So hello everybody. We are live on the technically the third A Very Heavy Agenda live stream, and I'm joined tonight by radio host Jake Fox. Say hi, Jake.
Hey, how are you doing, everybody? I'm the host of Black Tower Radio. It airs on 10:40 a.m., 92.1 FM, WYSL in Rochester, New York, and soon to be cybergorilla.org on streaming on the internet.
Yeah, and I recommend everybody check out Jake's excellent radio show, Black Tower Radio. It's one of the more interesting broadcasts you can find out there. He has on a diverse array of guests. That cross party lines, all saying very interesting things. And you dabble in some of the same sort of conspiracy zones that I like to dabble into, but you do it with a much clearer head than a lot of other people. So
Thank you.
that's part of why I've actually brought you on to do this tonight, and it's something that I probably wouldn't normally do on Media Roots Radio, although I've talked about this subject before, and I'm assuming you've probably talked about it on your show.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So the subject tonight that we're planning on talking about is the QAnon phenomenon that's been happening, I believe, since is it early 2017 or did it start a little later than that?
It started right after the inauguration and all of that, I believe.
Okay, so it's
That's
been
that's when I started really sort of getting into it, and that's when I saw the Hillary Clinton post, and I guess that's supposed to be the first QAnon post. So yeah, it is early 2017.
so when you say the first QAnon post, was this originally on 4chan or was it on another site of some kind?
It was on 4chan, and then he went from 4chan and he migrated to 8chan, and then 8chan it got nearly impossible to go into 8chan because there's so much traffic for QAnon, and like you would just literally be loading for very long. I mean, you couldn't read it, so that's why he moved it from there to the Great Awakening board.
So so basically, this is what seems like to be largely driving a lot of traffic to 4chan right now in general.
All right.
Interesting. Um, and so I just went on this website, and just I guess we should give a little bit of backstory to what this is. I've come at this extremely skeptically, um, and you have sort of recently convinced me a little bit that this might actually have some um, not necessarily validity in terms of what the narrative Q is putting out, but it actually might be something close to the president himself. And there's and that's one of to me one of the most compelling, strangest parts about this whole thing is that there are several layers to it. A lot of the way the mainstream media is covering this is just sort of outright glossing over what it is, um, saying
Wow.
saying it's the QAnon conspiracy, saying it's like sort of the sequel to Pizzagate, but they're not saying why or how it got there, or sort of why it's picked up so much steam. So why don't you like explain a little bit how it evolved, like from there, or sort of like what it came out of and how it got so much validity.
I think it got so much validity because he was proven to be right multiple times that would only come from. I mean, these things that he was saying would only come from someone in the orbit of Trump. I the the real three of them that stick out for me actually, and there's a fourth. Trump actually retweeted a QAnon article one time on his Twitter. Um,
Wait, are you talking about that
the
MAGA
MAGA
pilled?
pill. Yeah.
Yes, the MAGA pilled account was the actual article he retweeted was it was about something else, wasn't it? And the rest of the guy's website was all about QAnon, or was it actually? What was? Do you remember what the actual article he retweeted from that was?
I don't remember the actual article, but
Okay.
the link that it was about QAnon. But the link that Trump retweeted took you directly to magapill.com, and the front cover page was a QAnon article. Like it
Yeah.
was the front and center thing on the site. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that could be coincidental, of course, but I mean, it's certainly a thing that makes you go, you know.
Well, I mean, at the very least, I mean, at that point when I read that, I thought there was nothing at all to back up this claim that it actually was someone posting that was in Trump's orbit somehow. I just thought at the time when I saw that, wow, that's really sort of bizarre that Trump would be signaling, people to pay attention to this. And, I mean, that was bizarre in and of itself because it was like it seemed to be early enough stages of it where I was still, frankly, very confused about what it was. Like, I knew a little bit about it. And I just remember thinking, wow, that seems more than a hint. And then I remember, I don't know if we had a discussion about this, Jake, but I remember it was just a few days later, maybe within the span of the same week, where Sean Hannity also retweeted a Q account of some kind, so talking about the storm is coming, and Sean Hannity's like, yeah, it's coming, or something like that. And then also, Drudge Report linked to an article that was, it wasn't even an article actually, and they've done this before as what I believe is almost like Matt Drudge doing some kind of barely coded message on his website. And what I mean is, he'll post a link to a Twitter account about something sort of trivial and insignificant, but the Twitter account itself will be sort of a very potent, sort of particular right wing narrative of some kind. And in this case, he linked to a video saying Trump cheered or booed. I don't remember if it was booed or cheered at some sports event or something. And when you click on the Twitter link to go to the video, and this was like his main link up on his front page with a giant thumbnail image, it went to an account that had the video, of him being booed or whatever. And then every other post on the Twitter account, and the Twitter account itself was themed around Q once again. And I remember when I saw this, I was like, okay, there's something, it seems to appear to be, at the very least, some kind of hinting being done by some of these more mainstream figures that they want people to look at Q. And that was one of the first things that you thought added some validity to it. What were some of the other things?
It didn't really like at the time. It didn't like add validity to it. It more like made me, question whether there was validity there between Q and a relationship between Q and Trump. But I'd have to say that the thing that really got me, the moment that really got me, was when Q posted Qingqing China Tuesday watch. And this was on a Saturday, and on Tuesday, the president of China said from Qingqing in China, obviously, that he was taking out all the foreign auto tariffs. Like, so Q was signaling a Trump victory in the trade war on Tuesday, and it came, and I'm like, wow. I mean, that there's no way anyone would ever know that unless they were in the Trump orbit. No one knew what the president of China was going to do.
Yeah, and just so people watching know, I mean, I just wanted to restate my position is that I think there's something very interesting here about this actually being in Trump's orbit, but that's a completely different issue from if the other things Q was saying is true. Because he's saying, I mean, he's over apparently 1,000 posts so far, so there's quite a bit in there to sift through.
A lot of weird stuff too. There's like Angela Merkel is Hitler's secret daughter.
I remember you showed me that.
A lot of weird Pizzagate stuff. Eric Prince. Just a whole bunch of right wing conspiracy weirdness that it seems like you kind of need to be for that stuff to be completely trusted. If you're not diving into that sort of thing, you might be hiding something, according to a lot of the people that really believe in it or them or whatever.
Of course. I mean, I've even personally experienced it when I've just posted sort of snarky, so I mean, like, I come off as pretty dickish sometimes about this kind of stuff because, like, I mean, like, I think a lot of it's silly, but yet, I mean, there's definitely some intriguing aspects of it. But I mean, I've experienced it myself where people are just like, "What are you hiding? Are you gonna get caught up in the storm? Like what's on your computer?" I mean, it's interesting that that's sort of the level of discourse we've reached. Where it's like, it's actually you get accused of being a pedophile if you don't jump on board with that. So that's another troublesome aspect of it. But continue with what you were saying. Some of the other things. So the auto tariffs prediction was one thing.
The auto tariffs was one. The the Saudi stuff. They were Q was pretty much giving a play, not a play by play, but like an insight into what possibly was going on inside the whole chaotic Saudi situation, and he was completely accurate in his timeline of events. I'm sorry, I can't recite those from memory right now, but it he was right on right up until the coup happened, and then there was a new prince there. Apologies that I can't back up my information with or my statements with information, like more accurate information. But that's I'm just going by what my memory is to describe what happened at that time. But other Q situation was the John Perry Barlow situation, which was very strange. Um, he seemed to imply that they had to kill John Perry Barlow because he was letting the CIA in on the secure drop for Julian Assange, so they knew what was uh, was happening there. So he posted John Perry Barlow, no one is safe, and then a week later, John Perry Barlow did die. So that really freaked me out as well.
So that's been documented that that's whoever this person is. Let's just make sure we clarify this also, because I'm not I don't understand personally how why someone else can't just log in and pretend they're Q. Is there some kind of verification system where we know this is the same person always posting under this name? So there is. Okay. Just explain that a little bit, because I don't understand at all how that works.
There's a certain trip code that Q only has. Like people sign in, they have a unique code at the top of 8chan. Q always had his, and he had relationships with the people at 8chan, so they verified it was him. When he said his account was compromised, he went with a new trip code that was displayed to the public. This is Q. I'm in a new trip code, and then they went to the new trip code.
Wait, hold on one second, Jake. I'm getting word that people cannot hear the audio right now. So let me just fiddle with something. Sorry. Um, so they can't hear you after I put my headphones on. So let me figure out what I just did. Um, okay. Just do like a count really quick, Jake.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Just waiting to hear back from people in the chat. And if you want to look at the chat yourself, Jake. Okay, cool. Everyone says it's fixed now. Okay. Now I'm gonna take my headphones off. Everybody, just tell me if it's still fixed once I do it, because I don't want to wear these goddamn things. Is it still sound okay? Okay, I think we're good. Sorry, Jake.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Did we have for the entirety of? Wow, I'm hearing echo now.
You're hearing an echo now?
Yeah. I'm just hearing my audio and delayed.
You're hearing it back delayed.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Everyone says it's better, but now you're having audio issues. Um, so I must have changed that somehow. Give me a second, guys. Um, I'm going to put my headphones back on. Maybe that was the issue. Okay, everybody, tell me if it's good now. Do you still hear an echo? And Jake, do you still hear an echo?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Okay. So continue where you were.
All right. The John Perry. Did the audience hear the John Perry Barlow part or no?
I believe they did, yes. And you were saying, why don't you just sum it up again quickly in case people missed it?
Okay. Basically, Q posted that John Perry Barlow was some sort of compromised individual, and he was allowing the CIA to get access to Secure Drop, which Julian Assange used to communicate with his sources. And Q posted basically they're in some war against the cabal, and John Perry Barlow was working for the bad guys, and he posted John Perry Barlow all in caps. No one is safe, all in caps. And a week later, John Perry Barlow died. I mean, it's very weird. I mean, you'd think some sort of individual with a large following on the internet would be investigated after doing something like that. But I mean, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean that is crazy. I completely miss that aspect of it, and that's almost in a completely different wheelhouse than if this is close to Trump or not. That's almost like, um, did this person somehow predict the assassination of a, I don't know if I describe him, a whistleblower. Um, so that's very odd. So I could see, um, how that added a lot of validity. I'm just learning about that now. Um, but there was an additional thing. There were a couple other things I feel like you mentioned that made people believe or added some validity to the idea that this was somehow, this poster who's posting on this account is somehow in close orbit to Trump himself, actually like physically close to him a lot.
Oh, there were pictures posted. There was a picture posted supposedly right behind the president's shoulder of the quill pen he uses to sign bills and a bill he was going to sign or stationery by the president of the United States, and you could see the presidential seal and the pen there. And Jerome Corsi was going crazy with it and breaking down the whole picture like it was a Zapruder film or something, saying, that's the type of pen the president uses. This is legitimate and all of that. And I don't know. That guy's just a crazy, phony charlatan.
And there was
He,
also, oh sorry, did we
no,
interrupt you?
no, that's right.
There was also something about North Korea. Some kind of there. I actually feel like maybe there was two photos supposedly taken from Air Force One. They were posted by Q,
Yeah.
and he sort of only dropped the picture, but it was sort of like the crowdsourced thing that sort of would happen with Pizzagate. Sort of happened around that, where it's like they checked, like people checked all the flight paths and where the Air Force One stops were, and they were like, "Oh my God, this picture must have been taken like right near the longitude land." Like
Yeah.
explain that. Am I explaining that right?
No, you're right. I mean, basically all of the crazy people on 8chan, broke it down like, cloud formations and everything, and they figured out where it was. I forgot. I believe it was in an Asian country that they figured out where he was. I don't remember, but yeah, and they located on all the flight paths at Air Force One and all that. So yeah, it broke down to be accurate that he was taking pictures from where Air Force One would have been at that time.
And I've seen really no attempts to try to debunk specifically like that. And it'd be interesting if someone did, and in the process they found that it actually did have some validity to it, because this thing, let's just be honest about it, it's very charged in the sense that, I mean, I remember talking to you about this maybe maybe I don't know if it was a whole year ago, but you were more skeptical of it, and
Yeah.
some of these things have sort of, you know, been compelling enough to convince you that there is some validity to it, and
Oh, sure. But I don't think there's any doubt that this individual group of individuals is someone close to Trump. And I just talked actually today to Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, who is a guy. I mean,
yeah,
you
please
could
go into that. Yeah,
he's a guy that you could call is definitely in the periphery of the Trump administration. He certainly has a lot of friends in that administration. Mike Flynn is one of his very best friends. So he's certainly in that crowd, and he said today that he believes Q is somewhere in the Trump orbit, and that Q is doing more good than bad. So he said largely positive things, and he gave, in his opinion, Q is legitimate in terms of being near Trump.
that's very, very interesting. And let's talk about it, I guess, moving forward with the assumption that this is someone close to Trump, and but while analyzing sort of what the character and maybe some of the psychology of who the person or different people are that are posting this, and actually what is the sort of overall narrative, when you combine everything together, that they're sort of putting out, because there are definitely some themes to it, but there's also some oddness to it that I want to go. I mean, frankly, to me, most of it's very odd. But
It
there's,
is.
but there's, but there's some things in there where I'm like, oh, that's sort of compelling, to me, and I'm curious about, you know, some aspects of it. But I mean, I guess I'll just start with what are the most alarming aspects to me about it, and it only becomes almost more alarming when you look at it in the framework of that this is someone close to Trump, with knowledge about things Trump is about to do, or someone working with Trump, because there's just some strange things that diverge greatly from what is generally considered, conspiracy world or whatever. Um, and one of those things I noticed right off the bat was, let me see if I can pull this up on my, damn it, my touchpad. Hold on a second. Do you have a window pulled up, Jake?
No, I have Skype as my whole screen. If
Okay.
you want me to pull up the internet?
No, I can do it. Um, I'm just going to go to this. So that website that actually Roseanne Barr posted about, QMap. Um, is that what it was called? It's basically a compilation of all of, um, the Q.
The in the DMs of our conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so the website, if anyone wants to check out this website for themselves, it is basically what Roseanne tweeted as her second to last, like the tweet that actually went nuclear about Valerie Jarrett, looking like Planet of the Apes, that she tweeted. Right before that was a post, and this was like in a matter of minutes. I mean, she was firing off shitload of tweets that night. And in the last post she posted before the Valerie Jarrett one said, was a retweet of someone saying this is the best website to follow all of the QAnon postings. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. I guess I just wasn't paying enough attention to know that Roseanne was like that deep down the rabbit hole on this thing. Um,
Yeah, she does posts and does the hashtag QAnon all the time and stuff. She's a big. She's
it's
been on the Q train for a while now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and I mean, I did a webcast a long time ago about Pizzagate, and it should be mentioned that a lot of the fuel behind this is sort of the insinuation, that there is some truth to Pizzagate, and that these people are so corrupt and sick that they are inevitably all going to be arrested, and that includes Hillary Clinton, even Obama is mentioned a lot in this on these drops of someone who's going to jail, and it includes also liberal media figures like Anderson Cooper, who Q says is sick. These people are sick. And I believe he's either responding to or posting a picture himself of Anderson Cooper with a cardboard cutout of Honey Boo Boo, of the reality show behind him, and he's sort of implying that Anderson Cooper is a pedophile. So that needs to be mentioned up front. That's I think that's part of why someone like Roseanne, like, frankly, I don't think, and this is not to denigrate mental illness or whatever state Roseanne is in, but I would doubt that Roseanne made anything close to the same transition you did, Jake, in terms of looking more closely at some of these posts. She probably was already fully locked in from the very beginning of Pizzagate and really never, she just was down that rabbit hole the whole time. So, but the reason I wanted to bring up this website, which is qmap.pub, is it has all of these Q posts arranged in chronological order. You can look at the very first post ever, and also the very newest post, which is what shows when you go to the top of the page. And at the top right, there is a tab that says tags, where you can categorize them by the people that Q talks about, and the different subjects he talks about. And one of the interesting things I found that made me feel that Q is actually possibly some kind of dangerous psyop, if it is actually linked to the Trump administration. Let's work on that assumption that it is. Two Q postings in particular say a clean house is very important. Or sorry, that's part of his post. Actually, if you go to this website, qmap.pub, some of the postings have like a summation of what the subject is at the top, but that's not what Q actually wrote. It's just taking like one sentence or word from the post. You have to scroll down and look at the actual posting itself. So these two postings I'm looking at, when you click on the tag John Bolton, one of them says, "Who is standing next to Pence and POTUS? Message? Bolton cleaning house. Out they go. A clean house is very important. Q." His previous post about John Bolton said, "Follow Bolton, clean, stage, learn how to archive offline. The streets will not be safe for them." So this is just an example of how vague some of this, like, these things that Q are, the things he's putting out there. But also, I believe it's not only dangerous, it's also unprecedented to see any sort of popular conspiracy narrative that is openly portraying a neocon like John Bolton as someone who is actually cleaning house or is going to like take down the deep state. What's your response to that?
Yeah, it's possible. It's hard for me to figure out exactly what the point of this whole thing is, because he doesn't really have like a real narrative that would like benefit the Trump administration. It's not like Trump's base is all into Q and they're being held together by Q or something. I just don't understand like exactly what's happening here, because you have this Bolton situation. Sure, he's selling Bolton. He's also selling Sessions. He's selling Huber. He's selling Horowitz. He's kind of implied that Mueller could be a white hat as well. I don't really understand where he's going with any of this. It's really confusing. It's like why would he say Antonin Scalia was murdered by a 13-year-old boy at that ranch that he was trying to have sex? Why did he say that? I have no idea. How does that advance anything? I don't really know the point to any of this. It's really weird.
So QAnon actually has alleged that Anton Scalia is somehow a pedophile.
Yeah, he was killed by a 13-year-old boy. He was trying to have sex. He was stabbed in the neck by a 13-year-old year-old boy that he was trying to have sex with at that ranch in Texas. Yeah.
So okay, let me see if I can let me see if I can verify, just look that up, what you just described. I don't see Scalia in the tags. Actually, he's not listed in the tags at all. That's interesting. I wonder why. So whatever, however this website's organized, they don't have everybody in here. Um, wow, that's strange. Okay. Um,
This was like a big thing when it came out, like across Q YouTube. This was the hot story of the day about Scalia. He could be good at being a judge and on America's side, but he has dark secrets. He has his demons or something. Was the narrative by that moment.
well, that's really interesting, because so there's been several things like that. So that brings me to a point I wanted to discuss, which is sort of what, if you believe this isn't really actually helping Trump maintain his base, um, because there are things that sounds like what you're saying is there are things that diverge from sort of what we would see as the typical right wing, make America great again consensus narrative, which is that Anton Scalia is a hero, that he actually might have been killed by Obama. I remember that was pretty popular. So this is actually completely different narrative. Um, and it's also the John Bolton stuff also diverges from that narrative, because even like, conservative comic illustrators like Ben Garrison were making comics saying that John Bolton was a warmonger and stuff. So if Q is so he's flipping some of these things a little bit in the other direction. I mean, even what he's saying about Eric Prince diverges from the general narrative, because on one hand you sort of have the Gateway Pundit and a lot of these other right wing outlets promoting Eric Prince as a nationalist, as a patriot, he's a hero. But while Q is saying that the reason why he's valuable in sort of this whole thing is because he knows where the bodies are buried, and he said that a couple of times, and that's also differs to some degree from that. So that's interesting. But there were some other things too that caused Alex Jones and Jerome Corsi to jump ship from Q after they had been trumpeting it as a real sort of close to Trump, and also not just close to Trump, but true, valuable narrative for almost a year. Tell me a little bit about describe a little bit what happened there. Like, when did Jerome Corsi jump ship?
Jerome Corsi jumped ship as soon as Alex Jones jumped ship. I mean, they jumped ship in tandem.
Yeah.
Uh, Alex Jones, like we were talking about, jumped ship because Q started discrediting him in his post. But um, Alex Jones was discrediting QAnon from the beginning because he wanted to create his, well, not from the beginning, I should say. Q was going for about 3 months until Alex Jones first acknowledged him on his show. And then soon after that, Alex developed his own Q from a caller named Zach that just supposedly randomly called into his show, and they talked for a while, and then he's kept having Zach back on over, it became like a real regular thing, like he was Webster Tarpley going on InfoWars or something like that. It was Zach bringing his QAnon sort of news. And
Would Zach go on showing his face, or
no,
okay?
Zach is his pseudonym. But he was saying how he had like an even better sort of QAnon, the real QAnon, he called it. So he was always trying to control that sort of narrative, and when Q came out against him, he just flushed him down the toilet, I guess. And Corsi does a lot of work for Q. I mean, for Alex, so it just makes sense that Alex would pressure him. I mean, I don't know. That's the only reason, because he flipped completely as soon as Alex Jones did, and he cited QAnon resetting his trip code twice in one day as the reason. Oh, he reset his trip code. He's CIA. I don't even know how that makes sense, but
Alex Jones said that.
no, Corsi did.
Corsi. Okay. Um, okay, so just about Corsi really quickly. I didn't know he was the one because you had described to me sort of that prevailing theory that QAnon is an account used by a group of insider military intelligence people who are pro-Trump and believe that they are somehow taking down the deep state, or that actually that they even recruited Donald Trump to run in the first place as far back as 2014.
They recruited him, and they said they would protect him and keep the cabal from hacking the election. Yeah.
And this is Jerome Corsi claims he was approached by someone from this group of people and explained this as well. I mean, but I guess the part I'm a little bit unclear on is, did Jerome Corsi deliver this narrative to the general public, or was he just sort of piggybacking on it?
He was piggybacking off of what Q was saying. This group of individuals. Q says he's from whoever posted that day said that they were in military intelligence based out of Utah, and they work a lot with the NSA.
Okay. So Jerome Corsi claims he was actually approached in real life, like by someone from this faction.
I don't believe that even for a second, but
Yeah, I don't either, but um, that's what he claims. And then after he jumped ship, one of the pieces of evidence that he used as proof that Q was someone close to Trump was a pen. That he believed verified that it was someone close to Trump, but now he says is completely fake or something. Um, do you know exactly what he's disputed about that now, or like why he says that's not real now?
yeah, because there's a photo of the pen that with there's something in that picture. I don't remember what it is exactly. There's something in that picture with the pen that was proven to be Photoshop. So
Photoshop.
yeah, and I don't know. I'm not a computer guy, so I don't know this sort of stuff. But they put a regular picture next to the picture of the pen, and it was they put some sort of filter on it, and the Photoshop part was clearly a lot different than the rest of the picture. And in the other picture, there was no such weird graphic. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know more about computers than me. I don't know how they would if that proves that or not. But I guess the consensus was amongst people that were talking about it that proves it was photoshopped. So.
Interesting. Okay. Um, and one of the things Corsi actually said as to why he thought Q was a psyop, he actually described it as a deep state psyop now, um, was because Q
Okay.
is because, well, I didn't actually see the trip code thing. So the only thing I saw him tweet was that the people who follow Q now are becoming increasingly anti-Semitic. There's something he described as a dangerous anti-Semitic strain growing among Q followers, and additionally, um, that the new Q posts he claims since March 4th or mid March or something are formulaic, and he believes they're produced by an AI program of some kind. Um, so that's an interesting sort of off the rails. I'm. It's strange that he would, because I didn't realize Corsi was that wacky. I guess I don't really pay that much attention to him. I just hear his ads for his books and stuff on the radio, and like, um, it just seems awfully strange for him to go that direction to describe what he thinks it is now. But I also wanted to get into the fact that WikiLeaks also recently disassociated itself from the QAnon narrative and says that not only is it a LARP, live action role play, but they think that it's also possibly might be an inside the U.S. government psyop um, to try to steer conspiracy people in the wrong direction, or to try to get people to not question Trump.
That's a good possibility, but it I don't understand. Like, if it was just plainly that, it doesn't make sense how they have all of this, the Chinese president information. Why would they know about the John Perry? I mean, I don't know. Just I guess me saying John Perry Barlow was murdered by them is a big thing. It is a big thing. I'm not saying that, so I'm not gonna say that that was part of the equation. But the Chinese president thing doesn't fit into that. That's not something a psyop within the deep state would know about, or post about as being proof, because they wouldn't know such a thing. So that 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 doesn't fit for me, with being like a deep state psyop. I mean, they're doing a good job of making a fool of conspiracy people, though. I mean, it's silly to watch them. Like, he's almost like a god to them, or a prophet or something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's as I was saying, it's like really, really charged. Emotionally, where people are really counting on some kind of inevitability, and I guess that's my only real counter to, you know, where you when you said that you don't think it's really holding together Trump's base or a contingent group of his hardcore base, because I don't know how common it is, but like my sister ran into someone, or she got into a cab, and the cab driver started talking about pedogate and the storm and stuff like that. And you know, I think it seems like a lot of regular conservatives do sort of know about Pizzagate. Yet I feel like only the more hardcore ones are actually paying attention to QAnon. But I do wonder how much of this sort of links together in some way psychologically for Trump's general audience and his base. This idea that Hillary Clinton's a criminal, and we could argue all day on if she is or not. I obviously believe she is, but this idea that Mueller and all these other people, all these Democrats are the criminals. Why didn't they go to jail? And Trump is sort of being unfairly, perhaps even unseated by a deep state coup d'état. Even though Trump hasn't actually tweeted that, you could easily insinuate that he believes that that's happening to him from his tweets. And I hate to use such an overplayed term like dog whistling, but I wonder, is Trump, if Trump did post something linking to Q, is he sort of dog whistling people to believe that he's going to like clean, finally drain the swamp, take everybody down, and that we shouldn't really pay attention to the surface level, that we should maybe actually be paying attention to this storm that's coming. And I guess part of me wonders, like, how many, like, I wonder if we took a poll, how many people would actually respond to it and like understand what the poll is asking, and say, yeah, like there is some kind of storm coming, and Hillary Clinton is going to go to jail. And then the more detailed level of that would be like to poll people about, well, what for, and to see what percentage of them say, pedophilia versus, lying under oath or whatever. So I don't know. What is your response to that?
I think that, well, there was a lot going on.
I mean, do you think? Do you think Trump is actually, and his people are actually dog whistling to get, not just dog whistling to get people to pay attention to QAnon, but that it does serve maybe some type of wish fulfillment with Trump's base that is driving something more than just a hardcore, group of 4chan or 8chaners or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's possible it's reaching a heck of a lot more, of people than I know. I mean, it's possible, but I mean, how many people are really paying attention to this? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to gauge. It's pretty big, but I don't know. It's hard to gauge how big things are on the internet, because like I go out and I'm telling people about cryptocurrencies, and no one even knows what they are. Like, no one even knows. A lot of people don't know what Bitcoin is. So if you don't know what Bitcoin is, you're not going to know what Q is. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't know how much of an impact it's really making.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if that's why the resistance themselves haven't really touched it yet, because it's extremely hard. Like you said, it's extremely hard to gauge what kind of an impact it's actually having, because it's on like a, let's just say it's on another layer of sort of the political consciousness, almost deliberately so. Whoever's doing this isn't posting to Reddit or going on YouTube. You know, like let's just compare it to a previous anonymous group, Anonymous. You know, they wouldn't post on 8chan. They would post videos on YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that. So this is almost deliberately trying to be on a deeper layer of the political consciousness, and that's part of why it's so fascinating to me, is because it's sort of it's by design wanting people to follow breadcrumbs, and it's dropping hints and sort of feeding into this sort of crowdsourced sort of conspiracy world that has thrived so much after Trump got in. I mean,
It's really exploded since
yeah,
Trump got, because a lot of what's happening is affirming the fears of a lot of people, and that sort of thing is spreading. I mean, if you whatever you think of of what the FBI investigation motives are, or the DOJ or the Obama administration during the election, whatever, I mean, whatever your view of that situation is, if you view that certain groups as bad or nefarious or part of a cabal, and you see the current situation unfolding with, them just not wanting to release texts, or texts in 2 years, um, them hiding, obstructing information, McCabe lying to about what Flynn said. All these things are going on. And these people are like, you know what? These people are plotting a coup against the president of the United States, and they represent this evil cabal. Some of them, maybe anti-Semitic, or whatever their motivations are. But it's certainly, um, it's affirming a ton of conspiracy theorist fears, and because there's validity there to those people, it's spreading. I think, yeah, it's growing.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's it's. I mean, it's not hard these days. Yeah, because as you said, a lot of people's fears are coming true. Um, I think 99.9% of the RussiaGate stuff is completely made up, or it's horseshit, and it's coming off of the heels of basically a psychological operation propaganda campaign that I spent 2 years making a documentary about. So it's it's not hard for me to understand why so many people would believe in this and like want something really like these corrupt players to go down and want some drastic change to happen. But I'm just wondering like where, and here's I guess just a couple more examples. So
I
like where,
wasn't like trying to explain. Like, I know, I mean, I was just doing
no
it.
no no I know. I'm just telling the audience that you know it's like while I don't believe that this person Q is telling the truth, it's playing on a very interesting phenomenon happening in our country, which is just the reality setting into most people that something is very wrong. It's not maybe the most useful way of getting woken up to what's going on, but things are definitely changing in a very strange direction where fake news. I mean, in all directions. It's flying fast and furious. And so, I mean, I wanted to jump really quickly to a few things Q has said recently. Um, this is coming from the YouTube chat. Someone says that is there any credibility? Someone named Bob to the leaked QBRD Baker email claiming Corsi was part of a group posting as Q. Have you heard anything about that, Jake?
I've heard about that, and from what I understand, I mean, I haven't done a ton of investigation into that, but it's not a widespread sort of accepted as fact rumor. Most people don't think Corsi has anything to do with Q. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying by what the community thinks. I don't know. I haven't investigated it myself.
Okay. And do you know anything about um, this June 11th big event? Apparently, Q is predicting I don't know if it's a false flag or what he's saying is going to happen. Do you know anything about?
I do. June
Okay.
11th has been a date he's targeted for quite some time. It's something very large to happen. Um, the exact wording of the post escapes me, but June 11th is a real big day in the Q community, and a lot of people are going to put a ton of value into what happens that day, as far as their I guess loyal Q servitude moving forward. But I don't know. Who knows what's gonna? I don't know. Maybe they know something. Maybe they know the IG reports coming out that day, and they're posting about it. So yeah, I mean that's what I think anyway.
Okay. So, and just, I mean, going back to some of these other promised booms, one of the only like things that I grabbed onto the course he said that seemed kind of accurate was that there's a lot of supposed booms that QAnon has promised are going to happen that were not delivered or that didn't happen. And one of them that I specifically remember was the State of the Union address was supposed to be something really big. And I'm not sure. I mean, from what I remember, a lot of Q's followers, and I don't know if Q himself claimed this, but I remember a lot of Q's followers believed that Hillary Clinton and several other Obama administration officials were about to be rounded up and sent to jail, and that was going to be announced on that night. Do you remember anything about that false
Yeah,
claim, or and why that they continued to believe? What happened after that? Why did the faith keep going after that?
because he didn't say that directly. Um, People inferred a lot. He does this a lot. Like he'll say, um, mother of all bombs coming on this day, and then something will happen on that day, but you don't know if that's what he was talking about or not, and that's happened before as well. So people add a lot to what he said. It happens quite often. Like whenever he does a boom or something, he goes, "Oh, I bet you." People just start commenting in the chats and coming up with like their own sort of theories on what's happened, and some of them catch fire. That's an example of that.
So, I mean, what's interesting is it's almost like the difference between this and Pizzagate largely is that there's a Pied Piper in the mix, in the sense that there's someone guiding a field of sort of crowdsourced investigators or researchers down a trail rather than the sort of them feeding off of the Podesta emails, or things like that, and just sort of a feedback loop. So that's a very interesting thing. Um, I mean, I'm still really baffled by it. I mean, actually, one of the things that convinced me that this could be some kind of like psychological operation being ran by the Trump administration was that tippy top
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
because that's just very, very bizarre. And just so people understand what I mean, someone asked Q, "Is there any way the president could give a shout out, like no, like to you or whatever, like so we know that you're real?" And they said, "Can he say that fit the word tip top into a speech or something?" And so like that Easter speech that Trump did, that very, very strange scene with him standing next to the Easter bunny on the White House balcony, where he says, a lot of people like to they say the White House is a really great it's a space. Some people call it a house. He like stumbled for like 30 seconds trying to like figure out what word he was going to say. He meant to say house. It's the White House. And he said it's in tippy top shape. As some like people like to say, tip top shape. And he kind of gives this like bizarre smile. And honestly, when I remember back to that clip, I was thinking, wow, how weird is it if this is actually being run somehow out of the Trump administration? And I guess we spent so much time talking about examining, all these different postings and going back and forth on the validity of it, but let's just assume for the rest of the discussion that this is something very close to Donald Trump and what that actually means. Because, like, what would be, what would be the purpose of Trump being involved in running some kind of narrative like this? Like, do you think that if he actually is facing genuine impeachment somehow or indictment, that it'll go that this account will go to a whole new level, perhaps?
Evolutionary sort of way or something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, that's kind of what I'm insinuating. I've brought this up on your show before that it worries me what kind of the banter that people like Alex Jones and Q are throwing around about sort of, especially the temporary military control post by Q, which really caught my eye, where he said that might need to be put in place because the deep state's going to try to move on Trump, so they might need to install essentially martial law temporarily. I mean, what does it
Yeah.
mean if this is Trump? If this is Trump, what? I'm sorry, I'm just threw a lot of stuff at you again.
No, it's cool. But Trump has done a couple executive orders. One of them was for or human trafficking or something, which included language that pretty much declared martial law in the United States, like the language of martial law related to this issue. And all of the I'm not going to use that word, it's not PC, but all of the Q community would, go crazy. They'd be like, this is evidence of Trump planning martial law to crack down on the cabal. He's going to take out the fake media, and everything's going to be fixed now. So these things get carried away very fast.
I mean, what? I mean, like, let's just imagine for a second, like, what could Trump use this for? Okay, so that's one of the worst case scenarios. That let's flip that upside down. That Trump might actually could use this if he wanted to try, I guess, to rile up the public to stop his impeachment or something. That's like a worst case scenario that I see. I don't know how likely that is, especially because, as you said, it's impossible to tell how much of an influence is actually having, how many people are following it.
There's definitely a massive amount of weirdos posting on those things that I know you can feel the energy from them. They want to take up a weapon and do something, for this cause or something. You get the vibe from a whole bunch of them. There's a lot of weird people that post in that group, man, and Q could easily send them, literally a dangerous amount of people over the edge to do something.
So you believe that's? I mean, so I'm not that far off. You think that's possible? I mean, something dangerous is possible.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's a worst case scenario. But what about something maybe somewhere in the middle where if Trump doesn't actually face impeachment, and I guess this is I honestly don't know. Like, I keep going back and forth on this, thinking that it's impossible. He's never going to be impeached. To wow, he's going out there saying having his lawyer say he can pardon himself. I mean, it just seems every day there's something new where I'm like, wait, is this going to happen or not? I mean, it's nuts. But could he use this somehow if he stays in office for a reelection as a reelection tool? I mean, like, let's just say that he's involved in running this. I mean, he could. I mean, could he? Like, could that help?
Sure. I mean, maybe by voter intimidation in a way. Maybe it could say something like, the cabal Soros voting machines are, spread across the country. The Democrats have their illegals voting in mass. We need to protect the voting stations. We need to send people to the voting stations. I don't know. I could see a scenario like that playing out.
So kind of almost like a less directly violent version of what we were talking about earlier. Like, there might actually be some kind of oath keeper ish thing that might I actually that's pretty scary scenario, and I've already seen conservatives talking about why we might need armed people at the polls, or no, sorry, ICE agents at all the polls.
I've
So
seen that.
yeah, so that I mean that's already sort of going around. So it's not really much of a step from their ICE agents to the polls to like sort of like oath keepery people like minute or what do they call themselves, the border militia people? They're the
Yeah, the
Minutemen.
yeah the Minutemen.
Yeah. So that's scary. Um, and I guess
So
I don't.
weird.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking that it is someone close to Trump, yet a lot of the narratives that Q is putting out are very disturbing. Um, I mean, one of the themes that I've noticed is a lot of the followers are the ones who fill in the blanks with leftists and liberals. Q actually himself doesn't post very much stuff disparaging like the left necessarily. But one thing he does do is he's very seemingly evangelical, or
Christian. No, he posts religious stuff.
yeah, um, and that's I mean obviously that scares me. I'm not religious like that. I mean especially mixing that kind of stuff in with sort of the conspiracy narrative scares me. In addition to John Bolton being portrayed as someone who's taking down the deep state, and you know like on one level I wonder if this just could be a way for Trump to, he already had a really nice handle on the conspiracy movement leading into the election. I mean, even a lot of 9/11 truthers I would run into were digging Trump, and they believed some of the things Roger Stone was putting out there. How about Trump might be a secret truther and all this stuff. So they really favored him for a while. So part of me wonders if this is just a method to sort of make sure that those people, they can try to corral them back to Trump's side. The more that Trump disappoints the general, that these people specifically, like his conspiracy voters, which I would argue is a shitload of people, like people that Alex Jones brought to Trump, potentially millions of voters in this country. So, it could just be that. Because that would make some sense to me. Like this is just sort of a way to maintain and sort of keep that group of people, to keep the faith up with them.
Sure.
But yet, I don't know much longer that can last. If Trump keeps hiring people like Bolton, but it's actually interesting that one of the things I saw Q say was that the Iran deal was really bad, and it's actually really good. He did spend an awful lot of time posting about how that's good that's being dismantled. So that's interesting too, because that's not traditionally something, that even right-wing conspiracy people talk about very much. They don't really talk about, there's not much stuff there. I don't see it very often. Maybe there is and I just don't see it.
No, really,
But
you're right.
yeah. So
Well, the Iran deal isn't discussed very much amongst the right wing conspiracy theory. Um, they tend to focus more on Israel, um, the typical bugaboos like the Rothschilds and you know the whole the articles of the elders of Zion or the protocols of the elders of Zion or whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
that's their bag. Yeah. They don't focus on the Iranians, who are they're basically Saudis or something to them. They don't matter, right?
Someone asked on the chat, and we're gonna wrap it up here in a little bit, guys. But if you have any more questions, pile them in now, and I'll try to have Jake and I answer them before we log off. But someone just asked, do you believe the /PTG/general and the calm before generals on 4chan poll were psyops and inside the Trump administration? Does that make any sense to you, Josh? Sorry, Jake. Does that make any sense to you?
No, I don't know what he's talking about, actually.
Joseph, if you have any clarification you could offer. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he's describing something that predated Q that was of a similar nature. Um, hmm. Um, so yeah, any other questions? Please pile them in now. Um, but I guess, is there anything else you wanted to say, Jake? Just like
I'd like to get
about.
your what you think about like Q. I mean, what do you have like a working idea of what you think is going on?
I mean, originally, I thought that it was some kind of, and I've always thought that Pizzagate was more than just sort of a crowdsourced, self-feeding feedback loop. But I tend to be, a little bit conspiracy minded about the conspiracy. Where I've always thought that Pizzagate had some other factors feeding into it that actually seemed like they were part of the Trump campaign or part of some kind of psychological political operation. But
Because WikiLeaks really started that.
well, that's the whole thing, and I would have to basically insinuate that WikiLeaks got compromised on some level, but yet it's also easy to believe that Julian Assange sort of got drunk on power and hated the Obama Clinton administration so much because of what they were trying to do to him that it like kind of poisoned his mind state or almost like his principles in a way, and he just wanted to fuck shit up, and maybe Pizzagate to him was like that's when he decided, okay, I'm gonna sort of abandon some of my carefulness and just fuck shit up and let.
Started using WikiLeaks as a weapon.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's almost like if people would describe WikiLeaks as weaponized before. I would argue that the moment they allowed the Podesta leaks to turn in, the moment they allowed the Podesta leaks to spiral out of control into Pizzagate was when they weaponized their service, and they played a very, let's just say most of it was passive, played a very passive role and not really pushing back on any of that, but then also blatantly posting, you know, Cassandra Fairbanks, the Ben Swan Pizzagate thing, then actually starting to promote figures like Jack Posobiec. So you could make the argument that there is something to the idea that WikiLeaks um, was helping, maybe even working with some of these right wing figures. But I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, we've already seen that Don Jr. conversation Julian Assange had where they were just debating if they should, release the tax returns or not. Um, I don't know, like what the actual relationships are there, and I feel like we'll really never know. So that I feel like will remain a mystery. But I'm sitting here now, after talking to you today, talking to you over DM a lot. Basically, I'll reiterate what I said earlier, that I think this is probably somehow close to Donald Trump. Whoever's posting these are close to Donald Trump, but that they're putting out a dangerous narrative that perhaps could be used as a failsafe depending on what happens to Trump in the future. And I guess so I'm ultimately left still afraid of what it could be used for. And yeah, but I feel convinced that this is somebody who's posting here has access or is close to Trump, and that's very disturbing to me. I mean, because if it was a LARP, it would be like I could laugh at it. Like, I've done a beheading hoax video. I've, I'm not saying it's not a LARP to some degree, but I mean, if it was just a bunch of people hoaxing, just running a hoax for gags, I could laugh at it and be like, this is funny, but I mean, not to say that it couldn't still potentially cause violence. That actually is disturbing too. If just a group of people hoaxing 8chaners could also cause sort of a violent uprising of some kind. I mean, that's worth examining too. But I actually am leaning more towards the idea that this is someone close to Trump, and it's very unsettling.
Yeah, I've been trying to make sense of it for a while, and I really can't. I like your idea of being a failsafe sort of situation. I mean, they can really use Q as a weapon. I mean, there's probably millions of followers of Q. at this point. So, I mean, yeah, you could really, and millions of followers who are, I mean, you got to be kind of deranged to be like a believer of what's happening here. I mean, with the Angela Merkel is secret is Hitler's secret love child that was born from artificially inseminated Eva Braun's sister. Um, you know,
Well, I'm wondering if that's what makes me think that that's, or if that kind of makes me go back to thinking it might be just like a gag, a really, really clever somehow gag, to throw in stuff like Anton Scalia raping a 13-year-old boy, that, Angela Merkel's Hitler's secret granddaughter, daughter. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's, it's, let's just say it's weird if you're a full believer. But to me, it's not weird to be like, there's something here that makes this definitely more interesting and also more dangerous than a typical conspiracy narrative. Even more dangerous than even perhaps Pizzagate. Because even though a gunman went into Kama Pizza, in that bizarre incident, I still feel like this has the potential to be even more dangerous because there wasn't a Pied Piper with Pizzagate like there is with this.
the internet is really like the gates to hell, in a lot of ways. Like you open the internet, I've gotten just personally, my personal experience with the internet, it's so strange. I When I was doing an in studio radio interview or a radio show, I don't even know, 6 years ago, at a different radio station in Rochester. Um, I had the weirdest experiences because I mean, I'm not making fun of Christians or anything, but it was on a Christian radio station, and we had a lot of zealots that would call in, like people in militias and sorts of things. These were, our followers on our YouTube channel, which we had too, and these people would post long, especially if Israel was the subject, long diatribes of anti-Semitic things. One time, I don't even know how this happened, but I had to change my name when this happened. Someone from those a regular poster on our YouTube channel who we had to notify YouTube about this. They got my home address and they sent me a 6-page handwritten letter about anti-Semitism, Israel. The whole letter was insane. And one of the pages was a drawing of a Trojan horse, and it spelled at the top Trojan horse with a G, and it said Jews are the Trojan horse. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this person got my address. Like I felt so. One of them called my cell phone. So yeah, it's a very the internet is crazy and it's scary, and I can't even imagine how many of the psychos that Q has under his umbrella, man. It's nuts.
Well, that's what almost kind of concerns me about. I feel like, and I guess let's wrap up after this last part of the discussion. But so what you just said is very interesting because I haven't really talked about. I mean, in private, I have some of these incidents that are sort of similar to what you're describing. I don't have anywhere near the notoriety my sister does, but um, anyone watching this out there can imagine that she's had her fair share of
Yeah.
sort of kooky conspiracy people who have, gotten her personal contact information and done some pretty bizarre stuff, scary stuff. So I had someone deliver a handwritten letter to the doorstep of someone very close to me, and it was addressed to me, and it was very frightening. It wasn't quite anti-Semitic or written from a militia member, but it was definitely brought home the idea that not all conspiracy theorists are equal, not all conspiracy theories are equal. this movement has a very wide spectrum of very grounded people who follow some of this. Just overall, I'm talking about the whole world of conspiracy theory narratives. The spectrum is gigantic, and people, there are a lot of very unhinged people out there, and let's face it, a lot of mentally ill people who already have mental illness and suffer from, even schizophrenia, can use the internet as a portal to sort of stay in a very unhealthy place mentally and reinforce a lot of their own sort of delusions and narcissism or paranoia. And it's not just Christian evangelicals, but a lot of you can see a lot of the worst aspects of it sort of coming from that crowd of people who say that believe that a lot of their opponents are Democrat pedophiles, and that's sort of become a common thing, and it is scary, and I just wish there was a way to sort of reel people back in. I mean, but you can't. It's like I just don't see how society can even really come back from this. This sort of us becoming increasingly paranoid and following these but at the same time, like, I think it's great that more people are skeptical of mainstream media, and I don't know if we're always, if the paranoia is just like linked to it automatically. Like, I don't know, what do you think about that?
I agree. I don't know how we make our way out of this. This is like, we're deep into the woods here. I don't know if there's a way out. I mean, I'm not for censorship of the internet. I don't want, like Apple says, we're going to choose the news for you. I would never want to sign up for any sort of service like that. I don't want the government doing that. I don't know. I don't think there's really a way out. I think you just, hopefully people just learn, how to discern what is accurate or not. Because right now it's impossible for any critically thinking person to trust the media in any way. You have the media which applaud Trump's Syria strikes and at the same time try to undermine his peace talks with North Korea. How could any person who has the ability to think critically trust the mainstream media in any capacity if they're behaving this way? You can't.
It's a great point. I mean, it's such a shame because whatever that's driving them to do that, whether you want to say it's the deep state or not, or I mean, it really is giving the appearance that Trump is a martyr, that he is somehow a hero pushing against this whole, apparatus somehow. And while I do think it's super valuable to, like, across the board question all mainstream media, the way he's doing it, I mean, Trump, let's just say Trump specifically, is it does set a dangerous precedent that, like, someone like him could sort of ride on that wave of distrust of the media to push sort of their own, alternate agenda. But I mean, like, on the Korea thing, like, that's one of the only good things that I hope Trump succeeds in doing. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty nuts how much the mainstream media is trying to sort of take the wheels off that cart. I mean, but John Bolton was almost totally derailed it himself. So, yeah, I guess that's one of the only things I'm looking forward to is, like, this already seems like it's the train has already left the station as far as, like, North Korea and South Korea and sort of unifying their own countries with each other. So, that's going to be hard to undo, I feel like.
Oh yeah, I agree. And South Korean president credits Trump a lot. I think people are underestimating Trump's foreign policy judgment, I guess. I mean, he seemed to do a very good job here, and with the trade, I don't know, war, whatever you want to call it, with China, that worked out in his favor too. From what I understand, the North Koreans have said, people inside the North Korean government said that they want, from what I've read, they want to comply with what Trump's doing because they can't imagine a more hardline president. Him just freaking out and banging the table seems to be working with Korea and China. I mean, he's not given the credit he deserves because everyone's completely. I mean, he's earned the scorn of a lot of people for sure. I mean, I'm not caping for this guy right now. I'm just offering a view that I think is proper, that he deserves credit for what he's done, and I think he's done a good job in those areas.
Well, I'll only agree with you partially on the banging on the table part because we don't really know. I mean, I guess I feel like he was sort of, you know, the big stick approach. I don't think is ever the way to go, but I do give him credit on genuinely moving past. I mean, for Trump especially, his enormous ego, I give him credit for. I mean, even just reading the letter that he wrote back to Kim Jong Un was shocking. He is the most polite I've ever seen him be. I mean, so even if he wants this just for his own ego, and I've been saying this on Media Roots, even if he just wants the photo op of him shaking hands with Kim Jong Un to frame on his wall while he's an old man after in retirement, even if that's all he wants, I don't care. It's still a good outcome. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, it's amazing to me the way the mainstream media is literally trying to sabotage this summit. Um, and that should make everybody just be like, what in the fuck are they doing? We used to celebrate things like countries like North and South Korea coming together. So it's just, yeah, it's utterly bizarre how they're making it that obvious how much they want to just counter everything Trump's doing, even when he does one great, potentially great thing. And I'm not giving him credit for it, but it could have a great outcome. So,
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't. It, like you said, it really doesn't matter. What his motivation is. His motivation is pure ego. Oh, that's what drives a lot of high achievers anyway. And a lot of high achieving people do great things, like build factories that provide jobs for families. They don't care about the families, but they're chasing their ego. But the end result is positive for a lot of people. Same kind of deal here.
yeah, so I guess we'll leave it with the only silver lining of Trump's presidency that I can find, just so we don't have to move on to all the other crazy kind of racist dog whistling he's done recently. But yeah, it was great talking with you, Jake. And I feel like we should do this again now that I've sort of worked out some of the kinks of the technical difficulties. Um, Tell people again where they can listen to Black Tower Radio, and how often it's on.
You can listen to Black Tower Radio on 1040 AM, 92.1 FM, WYSL in Rochester, New York, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, on soon to be cybergorilla.org. I'm sorry, I don't remember I don't remember the WYSL website streaming page off the top of my head right now. I apologize, that's bad on me, but I'll be streaming on cybergorilla.org, and you'll be able to find me. That's a well promoted website, so look out for me there, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody check out Jake's channel. Jake's show. Um, I've been on a few times. We've had some great conversations. And let's definitely plan on doing this again in the future.
For sure, man.
Take care, everybody. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Fluorescent Gray, and they can follow you, Jake, at Black Tower Radio.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
At Black Tower Radio, capital B, capital T, capital R.
And Media Roots Radio will be coming back in a couple of days. We'll have a few new episodes. So everybody stay tuned. And thank you for listening. And please consider donating to our Patreon page at patreon.org/Media Roots Radio. Have a good night, everybody.